To have the sitting attorney general go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me, it was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law.
I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I first just want to begin with a news alert. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. So maybe we can move on. Maybe we can move into the present because it seems like we are living in the past. And listen, these are not the good old days, you know, like you used to sit around and your grandparents would talk to you about what used to happen. What we need to be talking about is how we are going to legislate, because I think that some of my colleagues have confused what our jobs are. And I get that we're sitting in judiciary. And so it may seem as if we are here to be litigators, but we are here to be legislators, which means that we are supposed to be writing laws, not trying to have our own trials and determine whether or not something is true or not, or whatever the case is, or who should be sued, who shouldn't be sued. All I know is that a great American hero, a good senator out of New Jersey, said something to the effect yesterday as he was shattering the record for holding the floor, a record that had been held by another racist in this country. As he shattered that, he said something about the fact that this should not be about left versus right. It should be about right versus wrong. And I am going to tell you that I want us to focus on right versus wrong. The reason that we are struggling right now in this country as it relates to people not trusting agencies, honestly, a lot of it is because of elected leaders. Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way. To have the sitting attorney general go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me, it was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. The reason that our party, or I won't even say our party, our country is torn apart is because we can't even agree on right versus wrong. This should not be left versus right. The only thing that we're asking is that we have law enforcement that will show up when there is an actual crime. If somebody calls and says, hey, I need you to investigate this cyber crime, or I need you to investigate this child pornography, or I need you to investigate this robbery, then we want somebody to show up, and we don't want them to look at us and act as if just because I'm black or because I'm woman, that I am not worthy of having that case investigated, because we have an administration that is continuously railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we don't need people that show up that feel like diversity should not be valued. That is why we should have somebody that may show up and looks like me. The final thing that I'll say, because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, let me tell you something. When I walk in, I'm going to walk in with a level of rapport and understanding that maybe some of my other colleagues will not. Charlie offered me my job, and I worked my butt off, and I worked really, really hard for all of my clients, not just those that look like me. And that is what it looks like to serve. Thank you. Here we go again, talking about Biden, and more Biden. Today is nothing more than a dog and pony show for Republicans to avoid facing the American people for their trash policies that are killing the economy and our democracy. Despite Republicans' claim of backing the blue and being the party of law and order, we're here today because Republicans are willing to throw our country's top law enforcement agents under the bus to appease Trump and execute his political vengeance. Now, I know remembering things is hard for some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, like remembering not to add reporters into a Signal chat discussing military war plans. But let me remind my colleagues that it was Trump who decided to store national secrets and classified documents next to his oversized bathtub and toilet at Mar-a-Lago. It was Trump who took the documents out of the boxes and shared them with his guests. It was Trump who told his staff to move the boxes when the FBI was coming. And it was Trump who appointed Director Christopher Wray as head of the FBI, the same director that allowed the investigation to move forward. As much as Trump and Republicans hate to accept it, we are still a country with laws. And when you break them, there are consequences. Now, make no mistake, we should all be concerned about the FBI. But my concerns as ranking member of this subcommittee, as a member of Congress, and as an attorney, as well as a citizen, are based on things called facts. And when I say facts, I mean clear, indisputable facts, not those alternative facts my Republican colleagues continue pushing onto the American people. So let's talk about facts. Fact. Even prior to being confirmed by the Senate, Kash Patel was directing officials within the FBI to fire members within the Bureau simply because they worked on the lawful investigations into Trump. Fact. Patel failed to disclose his previous work and financial ties with the country of Qatar, a country that, had you had read the Mazars report, released last year by the House Oversight Committee, you would know paid close to $500,000 to Trump while he was president of the United States. Unsurprisingly, the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force was recently disbanded, and the DOJ also cut back on its Foreign Agents Registration Act enforcement. Our enemies are jumping up and down now that we're doing their work for them. Another fact, Patel has never even been an FBI agent and is now leading the Bureau. Even one of today's Republican witnesses organizations, the Bureau, has advocated having an FBI agent lead the Bureau. But rather than confirm a director with credible, dedicated experience, the Republicans confirmed a political loyalist with no Quantico or FBI training. Talk about DEI. Didn't earn it higher. Another fact, Patel, who rails against telework, what he calls lazy agents, was working part-time in and out of Las Vegas, commuting back and forth between there and DC while also living in the home of a GOP mega donor. Think about that for a second. Could you imagine what Republicans would have done had, say, James Comey had been living in New York part-time as the FBI director, and if his New York home was owned by, say, George Soros? Speaker Johnson would have forced a floor vote on articles of impeachment within days of this news coming out. But nevertheless, my Republican colleagues are willing to sacrifice safety for stupidity as long as it's loyal. Another fact, Patel and Trump-backed FBI leadership have redirected FBI agents who are working on investigations involving violent crimes against children and child exploitation and transferred them to work on anti-Tesla attacks and redacting Jeffrey Epstein files. Talk about FBI waste and abuse. You simply can't make this stuff up. To be clear, Director Wray testified before Congress last year, noting that, quote, if each one of the FBI's cyber agents and intelligence analysts focus exclusively on the China threat, China's hackers would still outnumber FBI cyber personnel by at least 50 to 1. Yet rather than hire more agents to protect against these cybersecurity threats, Director Patel is reassigning agents to redact Epstein files. Someone please tell me how this makes America safe. It's almost as ridiculous and wasteful as Patel's idea to contract the Bureau with UFC fighters. And while I have very real concerns about the current state of the FBI today, I want to be very clear. My concerns aren't with career agents, the men and women dedicating their lives to protect our country and communities. It's with the irresponsible leadership and reckless decisions coming from Patel, Trump, and Doge staff within the FBI. Our Bureau needs resources to do its job effectively. What it doesn't need is 20-something-year-old Doge bags reviewing materials without having undergone proper vetting and clearance. The American people have a right to be worried, but these worries shouldn't be based on Republican baseless conspiracy theories. Our country is already on a dangerous path, pushing closer to causing irreparable harm. Republican members need to wake up and put Trump loyalties aside to engage in real oversight of the current FBI before it's too late. Congress deserves it. The brave men and women at the Bureau deserve it, and the American people deserve it. I want to add one more point. As a civil rights attorney, I have had to sue law enforcement. There have been times that I can truly say that law enforcement has crossed the line. And I truly believe that there can be one or two in a bunch that can ruin everyone. The problem that I have right now, though, is that we have decided to focus in on something that my Republican colleagues have decided to term as being political. What is political is when somebody says that they are going to come back and seek retribution. What is political is firing people because they simply were following the evidence and doing their jobs as law enforcement has been trained to do. And ultimately, regardless of whether or not anyone believes that it was right to indict the president, not once, not twice, not three, but 4 times he was indicted, ultimately, each of you knows enough to know that at the end of the day, it is citizens that sit on a grand jury that are the ones that decide whether or not evidence exists to go forward with an indictment. And ultimately, when this president was convicted by a jury on the state level, it was a jury of his peers. And so I want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your commitment. And thank you so much for the testimony that you will provide. With that, I will yield back.